Hi, I'm your host, Brenda Close.
And I'm your co-host, Kaili Smalley.
And this is our podcast, Treasuring Education. Welcome back to the Empowering Parents series. In today's episode, we're discussing the hot topics of critical race theory and social-emotional learning. You've likely heard both of these curriculum topics discussed as highly controversial in online environments and on televised commentary.
Rather generally, both of these topics carry a negative feel, especially for politically conservative listeners. I've heard many reports that call both of these issues harmful to public education.
And I've also heard the opposite, that they are absolutely necessary to shape a better future.
For the sake of our purposes and this podcast, let's just put the politics aside and get to the heart of what both of these terms really mean, where they may pop up in school, and what you as parents should know.
Absolutely agreed. Which one should we start with first?
Let's start with SEL, which is the social-emotional learning. We'll refer to it quite frequently as SEL, since this topic will likely appear earliest in school.
Great. Okay. All right, so social-emotional learning, or as Kaili said, SEL, is a vital component of our children's education. It focuses on developing their social and emotional skills, just like it sounds, helping them navigate emotions, build healthy relationships, and make responsible decisions.
That's right, and SEL equips our children with valuable life skills that go well beyond academics. It helps them develop self-awareness, empathy, and resilience, which are really essential for success in all aspects of life, in school, in work, and in life in general. So in fact, if you recall from previous episodes, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence are two of the 8 multiple intelligences that Howard Gardner identifies. So let's discuss how SEL looks at different grade levels.
In the earliest grades, SEL lays the foundation for positive social interactions and emotional regulation. For example, in kindergarten, children learn how to identify and express their feelings using their words. They might also practice turn-taking and cooperation through group activities. You know, sharing is caring.
And as children progress to middle school, SEL expands to include self-management skills and responsible decision-making. So students may learn strategies for goal setting, conflict resolution, and time management. And these skills help them navigate the challenges of adolescence and develop a sense of autonomy.
By high school, SEL takes on a more comprehensive approach, focusing on self-awareness, relationship skills, and social responsibility. Students may engage in activities that promote empathy, cultural understanding, and collaboration. They may also explore topics such as mental health, healthy relationships, and civic engagement.
All right, now let's address the elephant in the room, controversial topics within SEL. And note that SEL can involve discussions about complex issues such as race, identity, social justice, and mental health. So these topics can be perceived as controversial as they touch on sensitive societal and cultural issues.
That's right. While it's natural for parents to have concerns about these controversial topics, it is important to approach them with an open mind and consider the long-term benefits for our children. Engaging in meaningful discussions about these issues within an SEL framework helps to broaden the child's perspectives, to foster empathy, and to cultivate a sense of social responsibility.
And parents really must be involved and engaged in their children's SEL journey. So take the time to familiarize yourself with the school's SEL program and curriculum, if they have a curriculum, and then understand the topics and activities that will be covered. And if you have concerns or questions, do not hesitate to reach out to the teachers or school admin.
Right. And remember, as parents, you play a very significant role in shaping your child's social-emotional development, which begins well before the first day of kindergarten. So create that safe and supportive environment at home where your child feels comfortable discussing these sensitive topics, and keep those conversations rolling. Listen to their perspectives and provide guidance and context when needed. And remember, even if everything within that SEL curriculum doesn't align with your values, you need to be talking about them and sharing your values with your children at home.
And let's not forget the power of modeling SEL skills. So show your children how to manage their emotions, resolve conflicts peacefully, and practice empathy in your daily interactions. Family interactions are the greatest example for them to follow. Mom, what's your opinion on the most controversial SEL issues?
Wow, Kaylee, way to put me on the spot here. Well, while I certainly have feelings about subjects like gender identity, race, mental health, and social justice, as a high school teacher, it is my responsibility to know and to abide by my district's policies. In terms of SEL, a big part of analyzing literature with my students is discussing how characters respond to controversial topics. We might evaluate what causes certain mindsets and attitudes in the characters, and then the consequences that follow. Sometimes, if appropriate for the maturity level of my students, we might take it a step further and apply it to our lives today. I personally keep my own opinions out of those conversations absolutely as much as possible.
And that is strangely specific, but also a bit vague. So would you mind giving a real specific example for us?
Okay, sure. So let's start with a classic like Huckleberry Finn as a reading unit for an English class. It's on the approved list for my juniors, and I really like teaching this story because, first of all, I just love the story and the author, Mark Twain. But second, it's because I can have those really deep conversations with my students that are super important. One of those conversations is about the N-word and the context in which it's used in the novel. It's a valuable study in the change of language usage over time and historical context, and what is appropriate, responsible, and kind in society today. Even greater is the development of Huck and Jim's relationship, especially given Huck's father, whom he calls Pap. We discuss the pranks that Huck pulls on Jim and whether or not they're appropriate for their relationship. Of course, all of this is layered over top of the nuts and bolts of all English classes, the reading strategies, and the study of language. By the end of this novel, we really discuss how it has become an argument that Twain makes against his contemporary culture.
Wow. So looking back at when I read that novel in your class, I can see how we discussed all of those things, but at the time I had no idea it was so intentional and even remotely related to social and emotional learning. And thinking about it now, it definitely relates to that social emotional learning because in that social aspect, we learn to make informed decisions and we learn how to maintain relationships with others. So knowing the consequences and knowing the past and current social issues, we can really make our own decisions about our language, our behaviors, and our general attitudes accordingly.
Yeah, there's really no SEL standard or textbooks that these lessons come from, but it's just the themes that are presented in the novel in an English class or in the context and study in a history class or science class or even a math class.
So SEL sort of creeps into the classrooms that aren't even called SEL.
Right. It's how we treat one another, how we regulate our emotions, and how we engage in the difficult conversations. It happens everywhere.
So some districts also choose to adopt different SEL curricula that they may embed in every course. So for example, in one of my former elementary schools, we used Zones of Regulation, and that's a curriculum that helped to teach young children to identify emotions on a spectrum with colors, so green, yellow, red, blue, and then they learn strategies for when they are emotionally dysregulated. So if they're in the red zone, they need to take some deep breaths or etc.
Yeah, the most important thing is that you have an open line of communication with your child and your child's teacher to know what curriculum is being used and what concerns or questions that you may have for implementing those strategies at home.
All right, so let's shift our focus to CRT.
Well, this is a pretty heavy topic, so why don't we split this conversation into SEL and CRT?
All right, so join us in podcast 4.2b for discussion on critical race theory. See you there.
Follow us on your favorite podcast platform to get notifications of our next podcasts. And sign up for our newsletter at www.treasuringeducation.com.